I have been defending myself my whole life in different ways. What people don't get about trauma, it's not fixing something. There's nothing to fix. It's actually turning towards it and titrating that, turning toward it as much as you can, and then have resourcing. Resourcing means I have a caring partners or
Welcome back to another episode of the Unraveled and Rising podcast. I am Michelle with my wonderful co-host, Kimberly. Hey, Kim.
Hey,
Kimberly.
Good morning.
I almost called her Kim and she hates that. So, hey, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Yes, we're very excited today. We have a special guest, and thanks so much for coming this, week or so before Christmas. Today, we're joined by Michael Stone, who is a trauma integration facilitator, spiritual mentor, and author of Traumatized, a Love Story. We're going to get into that. Michael's work is deeply personal. His life includes early childhood trauma, profound loss, and later the murder of his wife, followed by more than 40 years living under suspicion until DNA evidence finally revealed the truth. Rather than being defined by trauma, really, Michael has spent decades transforming it into wisdom, service, and healing. Through spiritual practice, somatic work, and psychology, Michael helps people understand trauma, not as something broken, but as an intelligent survival response rooted in love and connection. Michael, thanks so much for coming and welcome.
It's my pleasure. Good to be with you both.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background. I was reading your bio that I had pulled from your profile, and there's a lot going on in your bio, so I don't want to overwhelm folks, but I think it's really important that they have a little bit of understanding where you've come from childhood and on, and then we'll get into talking about what's in your book, which I'm sure this is in your book, but I would love to hear a little bit about your background.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of a trauma poster child in some ways. Both my parents were at Pearl Harbor in the middle of the bombing. My father was a fighter pilot. They couldn't get any planes off the ground. My mother was the assistant to the Pacific Fleet. Both were heavily what we would call PTSD, used to be called shell shock, heavily impacted by it. My mother, shortly after my birth, really got whatever it was, some level of paranoia, and we could call it lots of names, but she tried to kill me for the first 2.5 years of my life. Then I found her hanging at 2.5. She had killed herself. My father was absent pretty much all the time. I had several stepmothers that were abusive, and so I had a pretty rough childhood, and went to military schools. My father was in the Air Force, as I said, and then I, was pretty much a type A personality, running 3 businesses, drinking 2 pots, not cups, but 2 pots of coffee and smoking 3 packs a day. Got into drugs and alcohol. And then and then I traveled around the world, hitchhiked around all over Europe, and lived there, went into the Army, had some more experiences there in combat. And which I don't talk about in the book. I really prefer not to. And then I had kind of an awakening in my mid-20s, and did a thing called the S training back. You probably remember that, with Warner Earhart. And I had a real epiphany in between the 2 weekends. And I was walking through San Francisco, and I was looking at the lights and everything seemed really bright. And I thought, you mean I'm responsible for my own bloody life? It was a huge thing. And it really was kind of a turn. And then I started, writing, reading a lot of the mystical traditions. I became an organizational development consultant, which really I did for over 30 years, which was kind of a corporate shrink. So that was my main issue. I also taught 5 rhythms, and for over 40 years, 50 years of dancing now. And and more got interested in psychology, which I'd already, my first degree was in organizational psychology, and then my master's in OD, and then 2-year international organizational systems, another master's. So I did a lot of work there, but still had a lot of challenges. Drinking was always a problem with me. Uh, and then and then I was married and had a child, beautiful, wonderful woman who still feel connected with, and she was brutally raped and murdered in Carmel, California. So I had a 4.5-year-old. I was a single father. I kept the drinking on the edge because if I hadn't had my daughter, I don't know what I would have done, but I had this responsibility and and continued to do my work and my own inner work also. And then I met Thomas Hubel about 10 or 12 years ago, and I love edgy teachers. Thomas has always been on the edge of trauma and the leading edge. And so I became a student, and that's who I've been working with for the last dozen years, probably, and became a, a trauma facilitator and also large scale trauma facilitator. So I focus on group work. I do a lot of circles. I still do some personal work, but I love circles because, we were wounded in relationship. So it makes a lot of sense to be healed in relationship. And we can talk a lot about trauma and my perspective on it. But so the circles are usually 12 to 18 people. Some are online, some in person. And that's what I do. And now I'm on the verge of going back into organizational systems to help bring trauma awareness into large companies and organizations. I worked for Microsoft, the European Union, the EPA, so I'm used to working in large systems. But the last 10 years has been more personal and small groups. So that's a lot. I'm
Interesting.
sorry.
No, that's good. And interesting. Kimberly and I were just talking about this, about bringing, for her side, bringing in conversations about dementia care into workplaces because people that are there are dealing with their parents, and that is creating problems at work. And how she could bring that into organizations to try to help them. So that's kind of so like what you're doing, right, Michael?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, helping to be a resource and, just help people navigate through that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot, Michael.
That's a lot. That's a lot for one
The other
person.
thing I think is important is recognizing that, well, a lot to say about trauma, but first of all, looking from a systems perspective, I'm, a systems consultant, and how when you're looking at trauma, you really have to look at the ancestral, the, individual and the collective impact of trauma, which is really a different lens than most therapists would address it from. So that's different too.
Interesting too. We interviewed Willie Handler previous, and he wrote a book. His parents were Holocaust survivors, and he wrote about their experience. But he talked about how they dealt with it and how that impacts the child. So some people get angry, some just go inside. Whatever it depends on how they handle the trauma that affects the children. And he was explaining that, and it sounds like for you, again, your father, I think, kind of retreating from the situation and not being there for you and all those things. How do you feel like that? Obviously your mom's response was very severe, but how do you see that as impacting you and others in trauma?
Well, of course, it impacted me greatly. Even this morning, I was on the phone with uh, an insurance company because I had some problems caused in my sinus, which were by my teeth, and I was trying to get information. And I went through this half an hour of press this, press that, ask this, and then they weren't answering. Half an hour being caught in a tape loop. By the time I finally got somebody, I was livid. I was yelling at the phone, literally. And I'm 80 years old and I do this work well, and I just was so triggered by that. And then I went and stopped and went and took a hot tub, and I went, wow, this anger is coming up is that there's no one that listened to me. There was no one that saw me as a child, and I got right hooked in. Luckily, I have the tools then to
Yeah.
go, wait a minute, let's look at this. Here I was, on the verge of a heart attack or something. I was so upset, and I went, wait a minute, this was my childhood, and so. One of the things about getting triggered is as you do your trauma work, the space between the stimulus and the response keeps getting shorter and shorter. So for me, it
Yes.
was 10 minutes probably between finally settling into the hot tub and saying, okay, wait a minute here. What is this that got me so triggered? And triggers are something not to get rid of. And
Right.
maybe we talk a little bit about trauma,
Yes.
because triggers are actually the nervous system uh, inviting you to heal something.
Yes.
So just to look at trauma, first of all, it's trauma is the most misdiagnosed, misunderstood source of suffering on the planet.
Yeah.
And every single issue that we have, whether it's war, racism, enslavement, genocide, they're all born in trauma. It's
Yeah.
all, and much of it is legacy burdens handed down through intergenerational trauma. But the question is, what is trauma? And so, um, when over hundreds of thousands of years, the nervous system has been evolving a very amazing capacity to, in an overwhelming situation, fragment a part of our essence and suppress it into the body, and it ends up as tension or numbness. That's a simplified way, but it's the basic issue that happens, and so that's lodged in the body. So this is an intelligence. It's not a pathology. It's not a disease. It's not something wrong. It's an amazing intelligence. So when you look at it through the lens of an intelligence, then it's like, okay, what is the intelligence here that had this part be fragmented and shut down? What we're trying to do all the time was we're trying to get rid of the triggers, get rid of the things that are causing us challenges, both health, your physical health, but also your mental and emotional health. And so, um, so to look at trauma is the first thing is to change the lens from something's broken and you need to get rid of it, that something's working, that at some point in space and time, there was a fragmentation of our essence, and that was an intelligent thing at the time. And so we have to look at that first. The second thing is to recognize it's not the thing that happened to you that's the trauma. It's what happened in you that is the trauma. So we talk about trauma, but we're really talking about the trauma response. That's the real issue that we need to work with. And so then we begin to look at, go to the body. Trauma is an embodied issue.
Yes.
Talk therapy is great for making friends, for relationship issues maybe, but for trauma issues, you have to go to the body. You have to
Yep.
go to the nervous system because that's where it's stored. It's stored in the body and it's stored in the nervous system. So, yeah, I don't want to talk too much.
Yeah. No, I love this. This is
Go on
explaining it
2
very well.
hours.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, with being triggered, I was even just triggered this morning, like you were talking about. And I immediately know that I'm being triggered because luckily I've had some training and I have some awareness around it. It doesn't always keep me from responding, but I'm aware every time, even when I am responding, I'm aware that I'm
Yeah.
doing it. And maybe I just feel like I need to get it out or something, but I can just take a few deep breaths and reset myself, which is kind of the
Yeah.
goal for me and I think even with therapy, the goal with therapy is to become your own therapist. It's not to be in therapy for 25 years. It's for you to have awareness. When I did therapy 35 years ago, the goal is for you to be able to recognize these things in yourself and to be able to help correct those, the same as you're talking about. I love that. But I think people automatically assume that being triggered is a negative thing. And just like you said, I love that explanation you gave about how it's actually an awareness and an awakening in you that maybe this is something you need to work on.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, Kimberly, do you have a question? Because I want to get to his book. Do you have a question?
Yeah, no. I was just gonna, yesterday I was trying to call a pharmacy for a client, and as you were talking about the pharmacist, and I could feel myself, and I'm like, oh my gosh! But I go right back to the breath. That's exactly what takes me down, and just having that awareness is just so helpful. And so just I can relate to that.
Technology is a great way to bring up your triggers.
Yeah.
I call it elder abuse.
Yeah, 100%.
So I really want to start, Michael, I want to talk about Traumatized, A Love Story, which is your book, which is available on Amazon, and it's also available. He just said he recorded the audio version, and we will put links to all of that in the show notes, you guys. You can actually click down on that and go right to buy the book or listen to it, however you get your books and audio recordings. But can you just tell us a little bit about what started the journey for you to want to write this book, and really what your overall goal was? And then, you can share a few tidbits from the book if you like, whatever you prefer.
Yeah, well, what really started the book, I mean, I've been a writer, particularly about organizational things and systems. But, when my wife was murdered, they had a hung jury. Um, it was really a mess. First of all, they arrested the guy on a traffic warrant. So they threw out all the testimony that was done there. Secondly, the picture that had scratches on the face got lost somehow. So that was another thing. The parents lied and said, oh, he didn't have any scratches on his face the next day. The girlfriend told the police, but then in the trial said that no, the police were forcing me to say that he really wasn't in the house, which he had told her that he had been in the house. So all these things happened, and it was a hung jury, 9-3. So the police were very clear that it wasn't me. I wasn't anywhere near what happened. It just, within hours, they knew it wasn't me. However, because no one was put away, the family still believed it. And that story kind of got out that I was a suspect, and it got elevated. People take something like that and then they add to it. And there was one person that was a particular political person that started blasting out into the community that I had killed my wife, I was a child molester, and that I was a womanizer. And, I was a pretty prominent person in town in terms of helping businesses together, being involved in a lot of nonprofit work, but it just really had an impact. And especially after this person started saying these things, it got so bad, and I couldn't get any kind of relief from it. I moved to Canada. And I moved to Canada for about 7 years that I was in Canada. I had a radio show for 17 years. I did my radio show from up there. And it was authors showcase of environmental, social justice, and spiritual authors that I did for 17 years. And I did that. And I pretty much, I'm a Canadian citizen also. So I was pretty much going to stay in Canada. And then my partner broke up. I moved to Nelson, from the coast. And one day I got this call from Officer Wilson from the Monterey police saying, we're reopening the case. This is after 40 years. We're reopening the case on your wife's murder. Well, whoa. And we have money for DNA evidence. So we're going to do that. So I came back to California. I just packed up and came back. And it took a couple of years to finally get to the case, a year and a half, actually, to get everything together. And then they had the trial. Well, the jury deliberated with DNA evidence. It was so conclusive. The odds that it was him were 246 quadrillion to 1. They have, in DNA evidence, and the 3 people from the Department of Justice there was no way. They did try in the trial numerous times. They even had the woman that started this and another woman, um, they subpoenaed them to as witnesses, and I thought, great, this is going to be fabulous, because they had so much on these other people that it would have been great. But the judge looked at it and said, these are not credible witnesses. They weren't even around at the time. This is nonsense. So threw it out in the middle of the trial. When they realized they weren't going to win the trial, the defense, they tried to bring it in again, and the judge said, I didn't let that in the front door, and I'm not letting it in the back door. So it just was a clean case. Unfortunately, in the newspaper article, local newspaper, afterwards, they interviewed one of the two women, the person who actually was the main person responsible for most of the gossip. And she said, I don't know why the judge wouldn't listen to the women of this area. We're all waiting for the appeal, right? Which really sent me into a major tailspin. For 3 days, I was devastated. Here, finally, my name is cleared, and the newspaper prints this thing. And I had this embodied experience, Michelle and Kimberly. I was crying. I'm 50 years of dancing, right? I'm very aware of my body. And I kept going like this, and I went, what is this? What is this? And I was a mess. I was angry. I was crying. And I, all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, this isn't about the murder of my wife. This is my mother trying to kill me by putting a pillow over my face whenever I cried. And I have been defending myself my whole life in different ways. And it was just, the whole thing just kind of cleared up. And I went, wow, I don't need to defend myself anymore. I'm not 2.5. I'm not 1 year old. And so that is what happens in trauma when you can feel the feelings, the emotional and the physical feeling. You don't have to push it or do anything. The awareness is what heals. And that's what people don't get about trauma. It's not fixing something. There's nothing to fix. It's actually turning towards it and titrating that, turning toward it as much as you can, and then have resourcing. Resourcing means I have a caring person, or I have a caring group, or I can take a walk in the woods, or whatever you love. I can go bowling, whatever, or skiing or something. We have to resource ourselves in this. So we titrate, we touch into it, we feel it as much as we can with a caring witness, because much of our trauma is developmental trauma. Certainly mine was. Much of it was handed down, but also developmental trauma. And developmental trauma is, the first 3 years of your life. If you weren't felt, seen, heard, held, or protected in that time, and had the eyes of a caring witness looking into your eyes with love, then you didn't have co-regulation. And if you don't have co-regulation, you don't learn how to self-regulate. And in order to self-regulate, I need that. And so that's what my trauma circles are all about. We create a circle of self-regulation, a safe place where people can share with others. And I just did a circle last night, and I was doing process work with people in the circle. And both the people I worked with, when we got down to the heart of the matter, and I said, who else has this? And pretty much everyone in the room had the same thing,
Right.
feeling not seen, heard, held, and
Yep.
the things that we're talking about. But they felt it. They felt
Yeah.
the tears. They felt it in their body. And I'm pretty good at finding where it is in your body, because I'm feeling it. And when I work with my students, I'm always teaching feeling myself, feeling you, feeling me, and the space between us. And that allows us to begin to not have to talk about it, because you can feel it.
Right.
And that's a whole nother area we could look at. But again, I don't want to go on forever here.
So I have a question. So Michael, so your wife's family also didn't believe you?
Right. And there's a video, I think I sent you the video, the Canadian television, Who Killed Sonia, which is still online. Um, it was after the trial they did it. And Sonia's brother came up on the camera and said, I owe you a really big apology. And that was so moving for me because I really liked the family. And but they couldn't, with no one to blame,
Yeah.
they had to turn to me.
Had to blame somebody. Yeah.
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 How's your daughter handled all of this?
Oh, it's been tough her whole life. She was 4.5. She still carries a lot of fear and anxiety. Has to lock the doors and make sure everything's closed, to feel safe. She's done a lot of work. Really, the trial wouldn't happen without her perseverance of it. And she's becoming an advocate for, there's a lot of programs for prisoners, for rehabilitation,
Yes.
but try being a victim and get anything.
Right.
That's a big missing thing in our culture, is actually support for the victims. And
Yes.
she's now filing all these papers and, trying to get support for people who, including herself, who had it, and there was a civil case recently, and then there was a big judgment in her favor, but now there's no one to handle the paperwork. So she's had to become a lawyer pretty much to do all the paperwork and all the filing, because there's no help for that. So for listeners, it's great to support the person that did the crime, but it's really important to take care of the people. And we had a ceremony down there, and all the people gathered together that had lost people to violent crime. And there was, just in this little town, there was a huge line of people that came up and shared, their children that were killed in the streets, all the different things that were unsolved cases and things. And those are all sitting around. I mean, we were lucky that there was still, and even then we had to find the rape kit. They had one thing, but the vial of blood had broken. And so we went, we had a good case here, but it could have been, it wasn't, but it could have been contaminated. Luckily they found the rape kit and saliva from the breast of my wife, that with the blood and that it was just, open and shut case with DNA. But it would have gone the same way if they hadn't have found that. And I have to say the police in Carmel and Monterey, Salinas area really went all out. My wife worked for Levi's, and all the police showed up wearing Levi's.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Was the suspect still alive at the time, or was he?
He's still alive. He's in jail, life without parole.
I didn't know if he was still around when the trial happened.
He was 65, so he got 40 years get out of jail free card. Yeah. So,
yeah,
never acknowledged it. In fact, his son is still saying it's Michael Stone. Is still showing up in all their, Facebook stuff and that. But, I've pretty much gone through the ringer, and I have very, very little energy around it anymore. And that's what happens when you integrate trauma, because integrated trauma is presence. It's not fixing something. It just brings presence. For a long time, my story was like a sidecar. When I talked about it, I was talking about someone I might have seen on TV, because it wasn't in my body. It was here. But once it's felt and seen and integrated with, it becomes just presence. Unintegrated trauma is destiny. It will repeat itself again and again, because the nervous system, this is repetition compulsion, is constantly trying to heal the wounds. But the more we push it down, the more the nervous system says, not safe, don't go there.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah. I love what you talked about with the victims. I work with 2 women that do microcurrent treatment. And I've had about 25 treatments, and it's really been helpful to me. but the Adams County Police Department, as well as another police department here in Colorado, has recognized the benefits of this. So they actually have grants that pay for them to treat victims of rape and crime, as well as the police officers and the firemen who are, going through this trauma all the time. So I'm proud, here in Colorado that we are recognizing that. And you're absolutely right. We need to be helping these victims to, so they can go on with their lives and heal.
Yeah, a wonderful book I recommend is My Grandmother's Hands, Meckham Renham. I'm not Meckham Rena. It's not the right name. My Grandmother's Hands. He's a Black therapist that looks at trauma from a white, Black, and police, the three of them, and how that all intertwines and goes together. And he's a wonderful therapist. And that's a great book. My Grandmother's Hands. Sorry, Meckham is his first name, and I can't remember how to pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
I would love to talk a little bit about, you talk about these circles that you're doing, and I'm assuming that's on your website, welloflight.com. Will you talk a little bit about these circles and what are they called? Trauma
integration circles.
Yes. Talk a little bit more about that, because I find that fascinating. What that is.
Sure. So again, like I said, we're wounded in relationships. So to me, it makes sense to have of that. And I have an interesting story. Another teacher of mine, really a Native American therapist, psychiatrist actually. And there was a person that was sent by the police to come for therapy because he was always getting into trouble. And so he got sent, and he says, "You're not going to be able to, to do anything with me," to the therapist, because, I'm a lost cause. Don't even try. And, kind of smart ass attitude and stuff like that. And so this therapist said, "Well, let's do this again. And would you bring in some of the people, some of your friends, So being a smart ass, he says, "Okay." And he invites all these people in small town, the police, the clergy, the people, and they all came, like 20 or 30 people came for this session. I think this was at Mayo, actually, clinic. And so, they all talked, about how they said, "Well, let's continue to do this if you're willing." So the priest and the police and everything, they said, "Yeah, okay." So they came the next week, and the guy didn't come, and he stopped coming. He just stopped coming. So they decided to continue to meet. And so they all started to talk about, these are the bad things, but these are the good things about him. These are the things that we really like about him. And he's got a lot of creativity. And it's this. So the guy never came, but he got better.
Yep.
Amazing. This. And he really ended up to be, whatever you call it, a good citizen in his community. After that, because they started looking at him with different eyes.
Yes.
Instead of being a troublemaker, and they looked at him with compassionate eyes, empathetic eyes, and heart, and he changed. I think that's an amazing story. And so when in the circles, that's what happens in the circles. First, it's really important to create a safe space. We have a lot of ground rules, no crosstalk, really high level of confidentiality of all sorts. No helping, no saviors. Somebody's crying, let them cry and have their experience, And so we have a dozen different, things that we agree to do. Also, they're 4 to 6 months long. So you sign up and you have to agree to do 80%. You have to have a commitment to it. I look at each person, they do an application, and then I check in with them and see, and then we get to work. And so I've got one person that's been in 8 sessions straight. And she's wonderful. She's a hoot. She knows this stuff, but she's always going to deeper levels, as am I. You know, I don't see myself as somehow above them. I'm doing my work. Like I told you, even this morning on the phone call, I was like, you know? But then I did the work. And if I couldn't have done it myself, I would have called somebody. You
Yep.
know,
Phone a
I have
friend.
people that are resources for me, a therapist, and my work with Thomas. I have a whole cadre of people that are trainers for the work that I do, but I never see myself as more than that. And I think it's really important to continue to work on the body to open up the senses, because that's really, what's shut down is really the physical and emotional aspects of ourself, and that then leads to all kinds of autoimmune diseases, cancer, blood issue, all the heart issues. All of these issues emanate from unfinished past. That's what all trauma is. It's
Yep.
just unfinished past. It might be unfinished past of my family or myself, but often it's legacy burdens from my ancestors, the people who have gone before me, and also from culture. You can't separate yourself from culture. Look at the state of the world right now. That is affecting us a lot. There's more suicides. Look at how many mass shootings there's been. What, almost 400 mass shootings in the US this year? Come on. That's trauma.
Yeah.
That's the voice of trauma trying to be heard.
I was going to say too that when you spoke about the fact that you not being heard or listened to when you were a child, I feel like that is one common thing that most people have. And I feel like that's what you're talking about. It spills over into politics and other things where people aren't listening to each other anymore and they're not feeling like they're being heard by the other side. And this is a relationship too, not just politics. And that is the thing that's triggering everybody for them to just lose all of, lose tempers and be angry. And I feel like I just see that everywhere where
Yeah.
nobody's listening to anybody. And it's like
Look at
everybody's
look
just
at
trying
who's
to get
running the
right.
200 and some countries. They're
Yeah.
mostly the most traumatized people on the planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And instead of they're just trying to yell louder because they think that's going to make them get heard versus, being able to actually have a conversation with somebody, whether you agree or disagree. And that's the thing where I don't know how you can appeal to people that are either listening or watching, how we can begin to try to heal that and obviously it starts here, but being able to have conversations with people that you disagree with and not wishing them ill will or wishing that they would, get hit by a truck. I mean, come on. It's like I feel like everybody's just out there with so much anger.
Yeah. Well, you have to look at the effects of trauma. First of all, to recognize we're all trauma. No one
Yes.
gets out of this, without being traumatized.
Yes.
But if you look at the effects of trauma, the side effects, the first one is a sense of separation, a separate self.
Yeah.
So I have to do that. I distance myself. I absence. I keep myself separate. But that's a complete lie. We're totally interrelated, and our
Yes.
natural thing is healing and connection. And so, we have to begin to realize that this idea of a separate self. When you are in that early developmental phase, that's called individuation. Individuation is how I learn to be who I am and how I learn to mature and become an adult. But if we didn't get that, we do something else. We become individualized.
Yes.
And it's the rugged individualism that is killing us right now. The song, I Did It My Way, that kind of says it all.
Yeah.
I did it my way.
Right.
And so that's the first issue, is this false sense of separate self. And I work with a lot of levels of listening that we work with, to deepen that, to deepen our ability to connect with people. The second thing is a sense of scarcity. Not enough. Not
Yes.
enough money, not enough time, not enough people that think like me, not enough, just not enough. I'm not enough, you're not enough, we're not enough. And that is, again, in that early developmental stage of not feeling enough. I'm not enough to save my parents from my father beating on my mother. I'm not enough to stop the arguing. I'm not enough to be smart enough to please my father or to make enough money. You know, it's rampant.
Right.
So
Or
that's
to be loved by my mother or whatever the case may
yeah,
be.
all of that. And then of course I adapt. So my parents are fighting and I go, something's wrong. I never go, something's wrong with my caregivers. My survival is dependent on it. I go, something is wrong with me.
Right.
And then I have to adapt. So, you know, we have the trauma, the overwhelming experience, we have the what's happening in me, and then we have the adaptation to that. And the adaptation is okay, I'll be the pretty one. I'll be the smart one. I'll be the dancer. I'll be the millionaire. I'll be the, you know, we take on these roles, which is kind of a positive side in many ways, that, you know, I become a doctor or a nurse, or I become a millionaire, or I become, you know, that's great. But that's all, it's never enough because it's scarcity. So if I have $1 million, that's not enough. I mean, it need $1 billion,
yeah,
you know, or 2 million, but you know, it's just, there's never enough.
I laugh too when I'm in groups where there are millionaires, you know, or multimillionaires, you know, they say, well, $1 million really isn't that much money these days. And I'm thinking to myself, it is to me.
You're right.
Based on perspective, you know. It's
My
like,
grandfather was the vice president of Bank of America for 46 years.
Oh gosh.
And helped Giannini start the Bank of America here when it was the Bank of Italy. And he was a character. He used to always said, that money's the dirty stuff. I wish I had a barrel of it.
Yeah, it's like you win the lottery and you hear all these horror stories about what happened to the folks that win the lottery. And I'm like, I'd like to just test it out and see what happens. I'd like to do an experiment.
Right.
Yeah,
but, you know,
give me a shot.
Give me a shot to try.
Well, that's interesting because most people that win the lottery are broke within 2 years.
I know, because they don't have any money management skills. So it's like you get up all this money, you go out and buy a bunch of stuff, and then you're broke. And they can't afford to pay the taxes.
Yeah, they do have a management skill. It's not enough.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the two. And then the third side effect that we could talk about then is what I call a break in time space. So what that means is that we're constantly taking our past and filing it in our future and living into our past, thinking that's the future. And so there's a real sense of a break in time. It's more complex than that, but you know, that's the basic thing, is that I'm always trying to get somewhere, but the place I'm trying, this is make America great again, right? This is the whole thing. That's the trauma. That is the trauma, you know, make America great again. Yeah. So we're trying to put the past back and we keep living into the past. And you know, the only way we're going to pull out of this is pull back and look at a completely new social system, basically. You know, Bucky Fuller used to say, you're not going to fix the system by working on the system. You have to invent something totally different and new to replace the system. And I think that's a really important point there. And let's see, the fourth one would be the need to be in control, the need to micromanage, the need to always have to know what's going to happen and be in control. And that's, you know, that just causes so much suffering, you know, when we don't have the capacity to be with the unknown. Being with the unknown is really important. I mean, the thing about not knowing, you know one thing. Your bird is having a good time here. You know one thing. When you don't know, you know that you don't know. That's brilliant, actually. That's amazing, because then I can like sit in the unknown and tap into my inner resources of my ancestors or my history and actually allow it to emerge. I'm very big on emergence. You know, that's one of the things in my teachings is most people are living in their story. They're walking their story. So they're just saying the same things over and over again. But in emergent is, you know, instead of speaking what I already know, I'm feeling into my body, and the words, I don't prepare for a talk ever. Even my classes, I rarely prepare, but I'm staying present to what's happening. And then I can speak from what's moving through me and what I'm sensing and feeling by being connected with you. It's very different than telling, my beliefs, my, strong beliefs. And that causes a break in belonging. And that's a
Yeah.
huge thing. We have 3 human rights: the right to be, the right to become, and the right to belong. Well, the right to be is I'm here. So yeah, that's it. But the right to become is the right to learn, to grow, to evolve.
Yeah.
And then there's the right to belong is how I belong in the world, how I belong to nature, how I belong to my family. But those can cause a real conflict, because if I'm in, say, a marriage or a relationship, and my partner or me wants to, let's say, do spiritual growth and starts taking yoga and classes and learning, about spiritual growth, and my partner isn't interested in that. So my becoming becomes a threat to the belonging in the relationship. And that's true in groups. And, when we get a sense of belonging by being in a group, but then I say, yeah, but I'm not that group. So I distance myself from the other to belong. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And you can see it everywhere: mass shootings, all of this. I don't belong to that group. So this issue of belonging is a very big part of trauma integration. And so you asked about my circles. It creates a belonging that is a connecting kind of belonging, rather than I belong to this group because I'm not them, and I don't have to distance from them, or I don't have to absent myself to be able to even talk to them. And those are really important aspects. So.
And, it reminds me of one of my clients with Lewy body dementia told me the gift that dementia gave him was living in the present. He said, because I can't live anywhere else. I know that each day when I take my walk, I know that I took that walk yesterday and the day before, but I don't remember it. So the trees are beautiful again. The sky is beautiful again. So just being able to live in the present, you're exactly right. We're, bringing our past forward and living that and making that our future. And it's much easier said than done, though, but it's a practice.
Yeah.
And it's something you have to do every single day.
I have to tell a funny story. When my beloved aunt, who was like my mother, never lived with her, but, with my mother being gone, it was her sister,
Yeah.
got dementia. And I was heartbroken. That's why I spent 2 years in working in closed door dementia circles. And and she came from a very proper family. My grandfather was the vice president of B of A. So, and her husband also worked for Wells Fargo. So they were, pretty proper family. And we're at the dinner table, and everyone is, you don't talk about things like that, right? And my aunt pipes up and she says, well, the good thing about dementia? And everyone goes, oh my God, what's she going to say? And you could see people cringe. She says, you meet new people every day.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
I love that.
I can relate to what you're saying, but this again, we're dealing with this sense of separation. And if there's one thing we need to heal in the world, is to recognize that we are not separate.
Right.
We are one body that's connected to the body of the earth. And, when you look at the environment, you can see there's a direct relationship to my disembodiment and the ravaging of the planet.
Yeah.
It's directly correlated.
Directly correlated.
Michael, I've been recently, I've gone through CBT, therapy, and now I'm doing EMDR, and I've been pleasantly surprised. Like at first I was kind of like, what is this all about? But it's been very, very helpful.
Yeah.
You have
CBT is not, I'm not a big fan of
Yeah, I didn't.
for trauma work. It's not, but the other, yes, because it does get you in the
the
body
body. Yeah.
and it works with rhythms. So, I'm always looking in my work with space, movement, and rhythm. So when I say space, I'm talking about stillness, spaciousness, presence. When I'm talking about movement, I'm talking about data, information, or um, you know, the inner wisdom part. And so those three things dance together. And when you're doing that kind of work, you're sending pulses into the body to awaken those parts. So I'm very favorable about that, but not so much CBT.
Yeah.
And some people get value out of it, but not
Yeah.
not trauma. It's just not. My focus is trauma. I'm pretty,
Yeah.
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 Okay, so
Narrow.
my final question, unless you have anything, Kimberly, I was going to ask, why do you, so explain the love story part. So you say traumatize a love story. What is the connection to the love story part of that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's really interesting. The mystical traditions, modern science is finally catching up with the mystical. I taught shamanism also for many years, and still that's part of my practice. So, what was I going to say? What was your question again? I'm sorry, it
Yeah, I
went
was
off.
asking about the love story connection. When you
Yeah,
say
love story.
traumatize
Yes,
a love
yes, of
story, yeah.
course. So, first of all, when the mystical traditions say, when there's a trauma, you don't turn away from it, you turn towards it. Rumi is always talking about that. Turn towards it. The Rumi poem, the guest house, I don't know if you know that, but it says, there's a crowd of sorrows, that invite them into your house, let them tear it apart. They might be bringing something for you to learn from it. Allow it all to come in. So that is really important, that allowing and loving those things. Thich Nhat Hanh, one time I was in Plum Village, and he was holding his hands like this, and he said, can you love, your little hatred, your little anger? Can you love your little anger and hatred? And it's true. So it's bringing love, and this is always bringing love to that part of yourself that's been abandoned. Plus, the nervous system is evolved as love, that the ability to save you in an overwhelming situation so you can continue to go on and survive. That's love. That's the essence of love. Love is deep presence. When I talk about love, I'm talking about someone's really there looking into my eyes and being with me and feeling me, and I'm feeling them feeling me. That's love. So that's how I see trauma trauma healing as a love story. Yeah.
I love that. I thought that was going to be your answer, but I just wanted to hear you say it because I think people need to hear that. And I think there's not enough love in the world. And I think there's not enough love even in our own communities and our own families. And I am a
Yeah,
big
Beatles
advocate.
told us that. All you need is love.
That's right. And it's still true.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Kimberly, do you have any additional questions?
I don't know.
Yeah, this has been probably one of my favorite episodes, Michael.
Yes.
I just feel like
you're so relatable.
Yeah, and your energy on this call, it's been something I think we need. It's something we definitely need this time of year. There's a lot of, negativity and bad things that happen over the Christmas holiday. And so I'm hoping we'll release this week and get it out there into I always call it the stratosphere. I know that's not what the internet is, but I always say the stratosphere, and to get more positive thoughts and messaging out there, because I know people will be dealing with things over the holidays, and
grief.
We want them to feel like they're supported and have a community of people that care about them and want them to do well. So
yeah. Thank you both so much. Well, that's a great thing you just said too, Michelle, is that if you want to practice trauma healing, go visit your family for Christmas. You're going to have an opportunity to have lots of triggers come up.
Or
I
don't.
just
A
really,
lot of practice.
yeah, just I really appreciate the work both of you do, and thank you for helping get the word out about my book and about the circles,
Yeah.
and it's I'm really passionate, as you can tell, about this
Yes.
work. At 80,
Yeah.
I'm just feel like I'm just getting going with my life's work here. So
I hear you. We have it in the show notes, you guys. We have a link to his book and to his website, Well of Light, where you can learn more about the circles and things he's talking about. I'm thinking about doing it because it sounds fascinating to me. But yeah, thanks so much, everybody. We may not have another episode before Christmas, but whatever you celebrate in your life, whether it be Hanukkah, Christmas, whatever it is, we hope that you're doing well. We hope that you have lots of love, and we hope you have a community of people around you. If you need that support,
mm,
please seek out a community of people that can be of support to you and will listen and look into your eyes, as Michael mentioned, and listen to you and show that you have value and you have someone there to witness your life, really. We hope
mm,
that for you. And thanks so much, everybody. We'll talk to you
thank you.
soon on the next episode.
Bye-bye.